the infiltrators. In the last week of April of the year 28, Jesus and his 12 apostles left Jerusalem and began their journey back to Capernaum. After 5 months of intensive collaboration, they bid farewell to the apostles of John the Baptist, who remained working in Judea under the leadership of Abner. The chief priests and religious leaders of the Jews had held secret meetings to determine what to do with Jesus and his message. They all agreed that something had to be done to stop his activities as a teacher, but they could not agree on the method. They had hoped that the civil authorities would deal with him as Herod had dealt with John the Baptist, but found that the Roman authorities did not see Jesus as a threat. Therefore, in a meeting, it was decided that he should be arrested on religious grounds. Politically, Judea was under the laws of the Roman rulers, but religiously the Jews still had their own autonomy, with their own court. This court was the Jewish Sanhedrin. Now the leaders agreed to form a committee of 6 spies. These spies were tasked to follow Jesus to Galilee and observe him to gather enough evidence to prosecute him for blasphemy. These 6 spies were devout Pharisees who knew the Jewish laws very well. They approached the apostles and, under the pretense of wanting to become disciples, infiltrated the group that followed Jesus everywhere. They remained with the group for almost 6 months until the beginning of the second preaching tour through Galilee. Already on the first Sabbath, these spies thought they had their first evidence for a charge against Jesus. They traveled on a long, narrow path, with on both sides wheat fields, and the first wheat stalks were already starting to turn yellow. Some of the apostles, who were hungry, plucked some of these stalks and ate it. At that time, it was customary for travelers to pluck grain without asking to stop their hunger, so the plucking was not an offense. But the spies seized this as a pretext to attack Jesus. When they saw Andrew rubbing the grain between his hands, they approached him and said, "Do you not know that it is against the law to pluck and rub grain on the Sabbath?" Andrew replied, "But we are hungry and are only rubbing enough clean to eat. Since when has it become a sin to eat grain on the Sabbath?" The Pharisees answered, "Eating is not wrong, but you break the law by plucking and rubbing the grain between your hands. Your master would surely not approve of such behavior." To this, Andrew said, "Rubbing the grain between our hands is hardly more work than chewing the grain. What are you making such a fuss about? Something so small." Seeing that Andrew was not impressed by their rebuke, they went to Jesus. They addressed him and objected, saying, "See, your apostles are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. They pluck wheat, rub off the husks, and then eat it. We are sure you will command them to stop." Jesus looked at the Pharisees and gave them a teaching response to their accusation. "You advocate for the law and do well to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, but have you never read in the scripture that David, when he was hungry, went into the house of God with his companions and ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for anyone but the priests to eat? Have you not read in our law that it is allowed to do many necessary things on the Sabbath? And shall I not, before the day is over, see you eating the food you brought for today's needs? You do well to honor the Sabbath. But you do even better to understand the purpose of the Sabbath, which is established for the health and well-being of your fellow humans. I tell you that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath." Jesus, knowing from his divine nature why they were asking him this, subtly hinted at this by adding somewhat enigmatically, "If you are here to listen to my words, then I will openly proclaim to you that the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." The Pharisees were taken aback by his astute and wise words. They felt caught and decided to keep a lower profile in the future. They also not dared to ask such direct accusatory questions anymore. The way Jesus defended himself against the legalistic Jewish traditions with their slavish ceremonial was always in a positive manner. The Master did not spend much time on negative denunciation. He taught that those who know God may always and everywhere enjoy freedom without deceiving themselves with the looseness of sin.